Nearly 2 months after snap parliamentary polls, the wait for a new prime minister here in France is finally over. Emmanuel Macron selecting the Conservative Party's Michel Barnier. The nomination has the far left of the political spectrum here in France up in arms. France unbowed, calling for mass protests this weekend. They are arguing that the recent parliamentary polls in June and July have been stolen. For more on this story, we can bring in Paul Smith, Associate Professor and Head of French and Francophone Studies at Nottingham University. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. Your reaction to Michel Barnier's nomination?
Well, it was a bit of a shock nomination. I mean, his name was only really doing the rounds last night. Earlier this week, we were talking about various different candidates, Bernard Cazeneuve and Xavier Bertrand, and then suddenly somebody threw out Michel Barnier. A surprise, yes, but one of the things that has really been an obstacle to the negotiations has been the threat of a motion of no confidence, a censure motion, as they call it in France. And the one person who was threatening that was Marine Le Pen, and it seems that she is less likely to automatically censor this appointment. So it's a rather concerning development, but a surprise, but a very well-known figure, certainly on this side of the channel, perhaps less well-known outside of political circles in France.
That's true. He was the chief Brexit negotiator, so it's no wonder that a lot of people in Great Britain would know him. But let's talk about this whole decision-making process of Emmanuel Macron, because when he dissolved Parliament, he didn't need to dissolve Parliament, but he dissolved Parliament in the wake of those European elections, because he said, based on the results of the European elections, he wanted a government that's more reflective of French society and the mood at the time. Then we had a month later, of course, we had the parliamentary elections take place. We know how things turned out on that front. Now he goes and picks a candidate to be a prime minister from the party that did the worst. How is he going to sell this to the French public?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, what he's trying to do, of course, or what he's been trying to do, is to find a coalition, but he's refused himself, Macron. This is where he's kind of crossing a constitutional line, according to the left. What he's trying to do is build a coalition, as you say, with his own party, the Centre Ensemble Renaissance, his various supporters, plus by bringing in Barnier, plus bringing in the Les Républicains, who did not so well in the elections, although better than they might have done. In some ways, they've held up quite well. And Barnier looks like someone who might bring in their leader, Laurent Wauquiez, bring them into support. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism already of the appointment of Barnier, that it brings one political crisis to an end and simply starts another one. So we're by no means, this story is by no means done and dusted.
It's not done and dusted for sure, because we have, of course, other reactions that will come in the hours to come. But we have the reaction from the far left of the political spectrum. Unsurprising reaction from Jean-Luc Mélenchon. How do you think this is going to play out when it comes to the socialists, for instance, and the likes of François Hollande, the former socialist president?
Well, certainly the leaders of the Socialist Party, Olivier Faure, has already been very forthright in his response, and also the leader of the Greens, Marine Tondelier, her tweet today was one of consternation. Sort of Michel Barnier, good Lord, sort of that's the response. So there's this building up, but this is not an appointment that is going to convince the centre left. If we want to put the Socialists and the Greens on the centre left to the left, certainly it's not going to be one that appeals to them. They might not go as far as Mélenchon calling for mass demonstrations, but they might well do, but certainly perhaps not the language of the stolen election, because that's quite dangerous rhetoric. But certainly you can understand that they would want to make their feelings very clearly felt and call on the public to do that as well, to follow that at the weekend.
But if Emmanuel Macron wanted a technocrat kind of figure to lead the government, he could have just gone and picked a technocrat. Yet he went and picked somebody from the Conservative Party. So he's clearly picked a side to align with, and that's that of the right.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he threw out the name. There was a name doing the rounds on Monday evening. Baudet, the chair, president of the Economic Council, and the response to that, because this has really been, a sort of politics by response. And when Thierry Baudet's name was suggested, there was this big sort of rejection of that. And on Tuesday and Wednesday, very much the feeling from party leaders is this is a political problem and it needs a political appointment. So that's what we've got. And we've seen over the last couple of days, particularly to go back to what I was saying earlier, that Le Pen, and this is why this is a quite concerning development, Le Pen and the Rassemblement National have kind of weighed in on the debate to say there are certain figures we would censor automatically, Xavier Bertrand. But there might be another figure, and here we have Barnier, where they've already said that they will wait and see what he says when he outlines his general programme, whether they would table a motion of no confidence and whether he would fall at the first hurdle. So this is a political solution, not a technocratic solution to a political problem, but it could well all go all completely fall apart within a week.
That is also true because the drama is not over just yet. I want to ask you something about looking at how Emmanuel Macron has done things since he's gotten onto the political scene here in France. Of course, he was neither left nor right when he burst onto the scene. He decimated the traditional left and the traditional right, but during his presidency, it seems he has strengthened the far right so much so that they are weighing in on who should be the prime minister of this country.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's been a process of the French would use the word droitisation, this sort of drift towards the right that we saw with Macron. That initially, yes, you're quite right that he kind of bridged or attempted to bridge the two centres, and then by 2022 was quite clearly shifting to the right. But of course, part of his project, having destroyed the left in 2017, was to destroy the traditional right and to really squeeze them. We saw that after the 2022 presidential and National Assembly elections, that instead of softening his tone and opening up to Les Républicains, he took a much harder line, although recruiting quite heavily from their ranks. And Barnier is another one, of course, from Les Républicains. So he's been quite destructive in that regard of not just the left, but also the right. But of course, also playing to a lot of and Barnier does as well, when he was a candidate for the presidential nomination in 2022 amongst the Républicains, he also is very big on, he made immigration one of his key planks, and that kind of playing to the rhetoric of the far right has been one of the features of both Macron and I suspect we're going to see the Barnier government as well. And it may well be why Le Pen is willing to hold her fire on Barnier's appointment.